So when we look at the diagram you have in your notes, in fact we're talking about a cycle which goes on. It takes a world cycle. You imagine your mountain being worn down to the ground. But this doesn't happen just once. It happens as many as 64 times. If you were to try to compare it with the length of a year, then it's a lot of years, okay? And someone has worked it out to 10 to the power of 140 years. So it's a very long time indeed. You don't need to go worrying about whether your life insurance is going to be paid up or whatever, whether your mortgage is going to be paid off in time. It's not going to happen that quickly, okay? But basically what concerns us is that there are 4 parts to this cycle. There is a part to it when there is deterioration in the world. Deterioration means that the ability of the world to support life gets much worse. People's lifespan gets much less, till eventually you get to the worst point, the depression here, number 2, where the lifespan of people is the minimum, and it's very difficult to survive. The earth still supports life, but it barely supports life. Then after that, there's a period when life gets better. There is evolution, there is more civilization, till eventually they come to a point when there is a golden age. So this is the point where people have a long lifespan, where life is good, and then it goes into a period of decline again. And the reason why there's interruptions here is because this happens over and over again. In the beginning, presumably there would have been a time when there is a first world cycle. And at the end there's a point where the world actually is completely destroyed. And then it happens again, happens all over again. And in the scriptures it talks about the world being destroyed either by fire, wind or flood. And there's a sort of pattern to it. But for 64 cycles, there will be, the earth doesn't get so badly destroyed that there's no earth left anymore. It's just a question of the life on earth. It becomes more sparse, almost dies out, almost goes extinct and then recovers. But at the end of the 64 times, then the world is completely burned up or flooded, or there's a wind so strong that it's blown completely to pieces. Okay. In our scriptures, we have 2 particular scriptures which are interesting from this point of view. The first scripture, which is interesting for us, is called the Aggañña Sutta. And this talks about a time somewhere in the top of the period of decline here, where the world is newly emerged from after it's been burning for many years. There's no life on it yet, but there's still life in the universe, not in human form, but in forms of life which can escape fire, flood, and destruction by wind. At that time in the universe, the only beings which are left alive are those which we would call gods. So they are celestial beings, which when they were alive before would have been those who are very good in meditation. So good in meditation that they were self-supporting in their own happiness. When they passed away, then what was left of them would be a sort of being which would be very subtle indeed. with a high level of mind, which was beyond sensual pleasures. It would be a mind that would be supported completely by the happiness arising from meditation. And such beings, they didn't have a physical body, they had only an ethereal body, and that body had a brightness to it. And at that time, the only brightness in the universe would be from such beings. There was no sun or moon. The earth was barely present. There was no night or day or seasons. In fact, there may not even have been a passing of time. But such beings were very long-lived. They had no sensual desires. And in fact, their body didn't exhibit the differences of male or female. They transcended even that. Now, as it goes, the Genesis story we have in Buddhism shares something with the Christian Genesis story. Only one thing, okay? And that is eating, okay? Eating. The problem started when there was eating. For Adam and Eve, it started when they took the bite of the apple of temptation or whatever. For us, it was rather similar as it happened. Why? Because on the surface of this newly formed earth, once the waters had settled down, there was rather like a fragrant earth floating on the surface of the water. And we term this sort of earth curds of earth because it was aromatic. In fact, it was actually nutritious as well. It was earth, but it was aromatic, it was nutritious. And as these celestial beings were wafting around in the universe, living on their happiness from their mental states, they smelled the taste of this curds of earth floating on the surface of the waters of the earth. And I got a photograph taken at that time. One of them couldn't resist the flavor of this earth and came down and wanted to taste this earth, even though it didn't have any physical need for food. So this contradicted everything that the life of a celestial being is about. This was really giving in to its own greed. So this means that in the quality of mind of this celestial being, something changed for the worse. Instead of being above greed and temptation, it suddenly gave in and started to taste these curds of earth floating on the water. When that happened, very immediately there was a big change in the universe. Because of this curiosity or greed, taking the physical substances into its body, it started to lose its aura. It was not only one of these celestial beings, but others followed its example. Some of them said, no, we're not going to eat this physical food, but others, they succumbed also to eating physical food. And as a result of that, some of them had more of a bright appearance, the ones who didn't eat it. Others became darker. And immediately there was a sort of discrimination between the lighter ones and the darker ones, almost like a racial discrimination from the even primordial times. But as a result of this, there were repercussions for the whole universe. Because of giving in to greed, the sun and the moon appeared. There started to be a passage of time. And for sure, the lifespan of those beings became a little bit shorter. Once they had eaten up all this curds of earth on the surface of the water, then there was no more curds of earth for their staple diet anymore. From that time onwards, there would be a different sort of staple food, which would be mushrooms on the ground, a sort of mushrooms growing on creepers. Not like the mushrooms of the present day, but again, quite a nutritious food, but of course more fibrous, more coarse than the original curds of earth, which was originally there. There would be the discrimination. So again, apart from greed and curiosity in the minds of these beings, there would now be something extra, which was arrogance or conceit. And they lost their ability to float in the air anymore, because they started to have a physical component to themselves. When that happened, they were grounded on earth. They couldn't go anywhere anymore. So this is the first life on earth. And as this happened, the food changed again to be not mushrooms anymore, but sort of creepers. They're again not like creepers you see growing on trees nowadays. It's fibrous food, but again, it would provide a complete diet. It wasn't necessary to eat anything else. Simply by eating this one sort of food, you could still get all the nutrients which you needed. But unfortunately, because the food was more coarse than before, it started to need digestion. And once this happened, then again over the course of a long, long time, the only beings to survive were the ones who could digest this food. And once they start to have digestive organs inside themselves, there would start to be the appearance also of reproductive organs. So before they didn't have reproductive organs, there was no sexual reproduction before. But with the appearance of digestive organs, then with that start to appear sexual organs. And it turns out that the ones which in their past had not been unfaithful, they didn't have the bad karma of unfaithfulness in their past, developed male reproductive organs. As for those who did have some history of adulterous behavior in the past, their genitalia developed female qualities. So there start to be, again, apart from the difference of bright or dark complexion, now there was a difference also between genders. But instead of one gender looking down on the other, something completely different happened. They were actually attracted to one another. And once they started to become attracted to one another, then they wanted to pair off. And once they wanted to pair off, any form of intimacy which happened between them, they were ashamed of this. Because normally the ideal of the celestial beings is a celibate lifestyle.